Hi, it's Victor Perton here, and this is the Centre for Optimism, and we are deeply honoured today to have the author of this fantastic book, The Gift Mindset. Renée, welcome.
Well, yeah, thank you. I've been looking forward to this. So, yeah, really looking forward to the conversation.
I have been utterly excited, tweeting and linking in and all sorts of things. Jenny, from Project Optimism, creator of one of the most fantastic online courses, The Habits of an Optimist. Jenny, welcome.
Thank you. With my partner in crime, of course.
Indeed. Your creative partner, Noirin, welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, Noirin.
And Amanda Noz, Director of the Centre for Optimism, beaming in from France with her coterie of PWN members. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you, Victor. It's a pleasure.
And Jeff-Kerr-Bell, not only our expert on world soccer and what's happening to the European contest, but an absolute driver of the optimism message, and in the financial services sector as well, which isn't always so optimistic. And behind him, you can see that vision that many Australians have. I think 15,000 of them jumped on the plane in the last 2 days. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Victor. It's great to be here.
And to those of you who are online as attendees, we want you to throw stuff into the chat group, come in on the Q&A. We want you to join us on the panel with questions and comments. Those of you who are watching on Facebook, I'd love you to come across to Zoom, but you're welcome to stay there on Facebook. And of course, people will be watching this on demand and in bits and pieces. And as we always do, at the Centre for Optimism, we always open our events with the question, what makes you optimistic? So, guys, put it into the chat group. But Renée,
yes,
a star of the show, can I ask you, what makes you optimistic?
So it changes for me day by day, depending on what's going on. But what makes me really optimistic at the moment is there's optimism, there's optimistic energy around, and it's the first time I've been traveling a bit and doing a lot of face-to-face, and really feeling that the uncertainty is sort of lifted and people are really getting back and embracing this next normal.
That is absolutely brilliant. And we of course talk about this sometimes as the better normal. So for us, that's a lot of fun playing around with that. So, Jenny, what makes you optimistic?
Well, being here makes me optimistic, definitely. Look, people, good people, being around like-minded people who are, who believe that the world is our oyster, and really, if we put our good minds together, we can achieve anything, makes me very optimistic.
Well, I was at the South Melbourne market yesterday. I might have given into one of those oyster temptations you mentioned there, Jenny. Noirin, what makes you optimistic?
Yeah, I mean, like Renée, my answer, because you ask me this so often, Victor, changes from day to day, really. And I was at the shops just earlier this evening, and I was reminded of something, and it was I saw a little boy, and he was having an ice cream, and I was saying to his mum, "Oh my gosh, isn't it too cold for ice cream?" And he goes, "Never," right? I just thought, so I thought to myself, you know what I'm optimistic about is that, I think we can do anything we want, when we want, and how we want it, and that's great.
Yeah.
We are so fortunate, aren't we? So many choices, so many choices. Amanda, what's making you optimistic there in France?
I mean, we're obviously in a very different situation in France than you are in Australia, where we're still on lockdown, though hoping to come out of it by the 3rd of May. But, despite that, despite that there's still significant challenges, in Europe around this, I mean, I'm optimistic that we're getting there. People are starting to get vaccinated. I saw on TV last night that 1 in 4 people in France had been vaccinated. So that's good. And, I think it's all the light at the end of a tunnel thing. You can see it happening, and the flip side to that is, because it's happening, people are starting to move into that mode of, as you said, the better normal. There's lots of interesting stuff happening, in all sorts of industries that have been pushed ahead by optimism, by the pandemic, that has forced them to look at things in a, an optimistic way. And Jeff's our absolute expert on digital transformation and change management, and I mean, I'm sure he can tell you just how that's been like a huge push, a rocket fuel sort of push to change. It's really interesting and cool what's happening right now.
And I think you may have had your inoculations already.
I've had one.
Amanda, you've had your inoculation?
I've had one. I've had the first one. I've had the first AstraZeneca and I'm still here, so that's positive. I get the second one in June, the start of June, because there's a 12-week gap between the first one and the second one. So yes, I'm also very looking forward to being able to travel when that all opens up and happens. But yeah, no good, no things. It's just been it's been horrible, the whole pandemic and thing, but I think as we're getting to this part of it, just what it's pushed, or every time in history there's been a major thing happen, it's also produced positive change. And I see that, just like, look at us, here we are, all of us around the world working together on Zoom, I mean, that's great. This ability to be remote, this ability to change the way business is done. I mean, this is really quite shattering, I think, quite norm shattering, if you like.
No, absolutely brilliant. And Jeff-Kerr-Bell, what makes you optimistic? And Amanda has already handballed to you the whole world's digital transformation.
Well, I'm optimistic that, as a segue from that, I'm certainly optimistic that organisations and leaders will, and everybody else that's working for them or working in organisations will be able to digest this sort of 10 years of technology change in 1 year, and we'll be able to. And I think it's dragged people along a journey that people were a bit unsure of going down, and they're there, and they're actually coming out the other side. There's still a lot of work to be done, but I'm optimistic that people will see that what they feared wasn't really there to be feared, and they're digesting it. So I think that's the first thing. Thank you, Amanda. I'm certainly optimistic. Given you mentioned about football and the Super League debacle, that I'm certainly optimistic about the power of people. And the power of passion to change and challenge people that are doing things. Challenge is always a good thing. It doesn't mean you go forwards, it doesn't mean you go backwards, but it does mean that you do something different. And I think that's mostly better. So I'm optimistic about the power of people with that, particularly given my first love as a Kiwi boy, which is Liverpool Football Club. So certainly very happy that we've moved on. So it's good.
Something he's prepared earlier.
Well, we are here with the author of this wonderful book, The Gift Mindset. You can see a pile of them in her bookshelf. We said she wasn't to have an artificial background. She was to show us our bookshelf. Renee, tell us, what is the gift mindset and how did you write a book on it?
Yeah, so the gift mindset, something I've embraced for a long time, and probably the last 2 to 3 years have really sort of played with it in a lot of our programs and with clients and even family members. And it's all about, and going back to what Jeff said, I was always going to write a book on it last year, and COVID enabled me 16 weekends of lockdown, and I'm not the only still thing about me is that I drink water. I had to get things happening, and I wrote the book during that time. But the gift mindset is all about embracing, not resisting, embracing challenging and positive experiences we encounter, and really stepping back and being open to see the gift in everything, and using those gifts or those lessons to progress ourselves, and even more so share them with others. And I just think there's so much gold in our lessons, whether we've had a success, how we've got there, whether we've faced adversity or a challenge, what we've done to get through that. And I think really being open to the gift and using it yourself and sharing it could be a survival guide for someone else.
Absolutely brilliant. And so how did you select the gift and the gift mindset?
Yeah, so when I really believe once you distill down the lessons that you've captured and you've accepted and you can articulate, I actually, this might not surprise you, but I had 50 gifts originally. And the editor was like, Renee, no. And I said, I'll go with 12. And she said, why 12? I've always done things in 12s. So what I did was I really did a bit of research. I spoke to a lot of people, interviewed a lot of people, including yourself, Victor. And the gifts that our lessons fall into are really soft skills, or what I call life skills, that we can deepen and develop. So we got it down to 12. I'm sure there's many others, but I think these are the main ones that people relate to, and they're all integrated.
Well, I just love them. I mean, for me, it first is, of course, for us, it's the gift of optimism, number one, the gift of courage, the gift of resilience, the gift of gratitude, the gift of curiosity. You know, and one of our board members, John Hagel, you know, talks about the passion of the explorer, the gift of change, the gift of growth, the gift of connection, the gift of empathy, the gift of forgiveness, the gift of contribution, and the gift of re-energizing. It's just such a powerful list, Renee. It's just wonderful. And we could probably spend days talking about this. But what I want to ask, when you and I first talked about this book, optimism wasn't number one. And now it's number one. Do you want to tell us about that decision-making process?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because the editor came back to me and said, I really wanted the book to have my voice. I didn't want it to be over-edited. And we did, just most people don't know this, we cut it back by about 15,000 words. So it was quite tough. So I got to a point where I said, you work out the order of the gifts. I'll work out what the order I think as well. We cross-referenced, and there were only 2 that were in a different order. And both of us had optimism as the gift. They're all important. And it's not so much you're always going to unwrap optimism before anything, but I believe optimism underlies courage, resilience, gratitude. I think you won't probably get through those things at the level you maybe could without having that, you know, that energy of optimism. And that's how it became gift number one.
Just utterly brilliant. And as you know, I'm just thinking, you know, Jenny, as you were creating the habits of an optimist, that comment that Renee just made about it underpinning contemporary leadership. You know, we go back, doesn't matter whether it's McKinsey or Disney or Coke, they're all saying it underpins leadership. What's your reaction to optimism being the number one gift mindset, Jenny?
Oh, I mean, you know, gosh, do we love it? You know, obviously. I mean, I think optimism underpins everything. I think it's, you know, for me, it's that hope, that sense of, you know, what can be achieved and what can be. And I mean, ultimately, that's, you know, we're all living in that world of, you know, trying to create a better tomorrow, a better the next day, you know. So I mean, I think that with that sense of hope, you know, you can achieve so much. So I think all of those other gifts, as you said, I think just, you know, you can achieve so much more if you just have that hope and that positive mindset of I can do it. So yeah, I love it. I love it.
And Amanda, you know, France is often seen as a sort of relatively pessimistic country, and yet you've had such success in recent weeks with a global corporation, you know, getting you to do an optimism workshop for International Women's Day. So what are you seeing? I mean, the president of France now is quite an optimist. What's changing? So Renée's idea of optimism is the number one on the gift mindset. What are you seeing in Europe?
Well, you know, I I think yes. I mean, you know, there's stereotypes about everybody, but in this region especially, but you also see in Paris and other regions, there is a sense of just breaking a little bit out of the norm, because we're the small version, I guess, of the Silicon Valley of Europe. There's a lot of tech companies and innovative companies down here, and there's a lot of different universities and different groups that are working on really interesting and state-of-the-art stuff. So I think that having, being more open, I think President Macron has certainly made people a bit more open to other ideas and what's going on. And he's also been very big on pushing the regions. And of course, again, the pandemic, just like in Australia, I think Bernard Salt uses the term Vespers or something, which is people disappearing from the big cities off into the countryside. You've also seen that big wave in France, which has also energized people in the countryside. And I think that's given a sense of optimism. It's not so much that, Paris is, of course, the lodestone in France, all roads lead to Paris, which, that's like a saying, but it's literally true that often you have to go to Paris to get from one place to the other. You go to Paris and then get out of Paris again. So I think that you're seeing this change happening, and people are seeing this different opportunities, and opportunity is what makes people optimistic as well. So that
Jeff,
would be my take on it.
You can talk both about Australia and New Zealand, but I think one of the things that epitomizes New Zealand's new leadership, or relatively new leadership, is an overtly optimistic Prime Minister. One of my favourite comments from the great climate change summit at the UN was, in fact, her saying you can look at it pessimistically or optimistically, but if you look at it pessimistically, you'll roll up in a ball. Let's get on with it. So I think New Zealand's picking up Renée's message as well, isn't it, Jeff?
Absolutely. I mean, New Zealand has been blessed with lots of gifts, of course, and its size, being considerably smaller, a fifth of Australia, give or take, population-wise. It's always had to be optimistic. I think you're born with optimism because it's the little engine that could. You have to be innovative. You have to strive, and you have to drive. While a lot of us sort of leave the shores for opportunity, they do that with not an inconsiderable amount of risk taking. And you can't be a risk taker without optimism. And I think that's certainly inherent in that as well. And we're seeing that through the leadership. We're seeing that, look, not just through the current leadership, previous leadership as well. And also the people generally. It's certainly something that is inherently part of those that are born in nature, but of course embraced here over the ditch. I have been in Australia, lived in Australia longer than I lived in New Zealand. So
yeah,
that's why I've got that beautiful accent. Noirin, you've just done a huge event for the Irish. University College Dublin with 300,000 alumni around the world. And I think they've asked you to go on with optimism. I think you've caught Renée's gift of optimism spreading into the world. Tell us about the Irish and their yearning for optimism post-COVID.
Well, the truth be known, Victor, from that seminar, they actually love the gift of Victor's laugh, actually. Laughing like an optimist, yeah. Look, I think everyone needs optimism, and optimism is digested and shown in so many different ways. And I think the Irish, I don't know, I mean, they're not unique to having humour. Probably a bit like New Zealand, Jeff. I think the folk are very humorous. I think Australians are very humorous, actually, very humorous, just sound different to the Irish. We all need optimism. And I think they're now going through almost a longer period of lockdown than we ever have been in Melbourne, which is extraordinary. Yeah, but you know what? I think if you don't have, deadlines and goalposts, and you just keep going, you can get there. So I think the gift of optimism and resilience, I think, are playing fast and hard in Ireland at the moment. But yeah, optimism reigns.
Yeah.
Well, I know we've got some people watching who are in their pajamas in Boston and San Diego, so
awesome.
They probably won't come online, but For instance, I can see Renée Giarrusso there from Brisbane, who's going to ask a good question when she comes up onto the panel. So Renée, tell us, when you were doing your research on optimism, that the first thing in your chapter on the gift of optimism is the health benefits
Yes.
of optimism. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah. Like I did some research on it, and also just from what I've seen over the years, and you know, it is contagious. I really believe I describe optimism, it's an energy. It's actually an energy that can be felt. I don't think people can put optimism on, if that makes sense. But things such as better sleep, better well-being, mindfulness, you know, people that you know, come from a place of being optimistic, and as Jenny said beautifully before, you know, having hope for the future, not just now. I think it gives people a headspace that is calmer, if that makes sense. So not getting so caught up in today, but knowing that things will work out in the end. But you know, we've got lots of different studies we've put in the book, but you know, I know personally I'm an eternal optimist, or have been, and my family, when I reflect, you know, I've grown up around, you know, very optimistic people, and I think if we can all be more optimistic, it's going to spread. You know, something my mum has said to me since I was a kid, and it's just part of our conversation, is every time I speak to her, she'll say, "What's the best thing that's happened today?" And it's such a good frame about, you know, not looking at what you don't have, but looking at what you do have, and bringing gratitude. People that are optimistic usually are in a much, you know, better place of gratitude in their lives. And attracting optimists, that's something we talk about in the book. I think optimists can attract optimists. You know, sometimes, you know I've been too much for some people. I had a business partner years ago that was like, "Aren't you upset that didn't come through?" And I'm like, "Well, we know why. We got the feedback. Let's move on." And that's, you know, I don't think ever change who you are, but I do sometimes dial it down a bit with certain people. Yeah.
One of the things we often share is that study from the University of Michigan that says having an optimistic partner has some of the health benefits of being optimistic yourself. So we always tell people on that first date, anyone there who's single out there going on that first date, pick up Renée's question, what makes you optimistic? And then that opening question, what's the best thing in your day? Got it, lift the conversation. Now, you've got in your book, one of the things I love is the 4 stages to optimism.
Yes.
And, you know, we've been doing a lot of work in this at the Centre for Optimism, Project Optimism. Tell us your formula, that formula of the 4 stages to optimism.
Yes. So it's a 4 sort of stage trajectory, and I think, you know, it can change day by day or in context, but I think we sort of go from a place of what we call pessimism. And it's really important to remember that sometimes people that are quite pessimistic have low EI, low self-awareness, and don't even realize they're in this state of pessimism. But it happens. And I think when belief and gratitude increases, we go from pessimism, or being pessimism, to realism. So really understanding, you know, where we're at, what's going on, to being pessimistic. Now, that's not a real word for everyone listening. I'm known to come up with a few different words. I actually came up with that word speaking to Noirin, and it just came out. And it's really being positive and optimistic at the same time. And then I think it goes into sort of the raw form of optimism. But hope and belief and gratitude needs to go, you know, if you think of an axis from low to high, for us to move in that upward trajectory. Yeah.
And you've also got 6 keys to optimism, Renée.
Yes.
So what are those 6 keys that you'd like to share?
Well, some of those, Victor, I really gleaned from our conversations and the conversations I've had with Jenny and Noirin. So smile like an optimist. And we know, you know, mirror neurons, if you smile at someone, rarely will they not smile back. Even with masks on, you can see them smiling with their eyes.
Okay, guys, everyone do a quick smile. We're there.
You've done that before. Laugh like an optimist. Laughing is contagious. We all know that. There's actually workshops. We bring in people that do like laughing workshops and humor. But just laugh. Laugh at things that may not matter in 5 days' time, 5 weeks' time. We spend 90,000 hours at work on average. I think it's a lot more. So have a bit of fun and laugh. Another one is, which we've sort of touched on, is greet with impact. We say greet with intent. So we're known in Australia to really, hey, how you going? People go, I'm good, but truth's always after the but. Then they go, however. I call that but's cousin. And that's always the truth. So, it could be, I know someone I spoke to the other day about this, and she said to me, I always answer, I'm amazing. And she goes, I actually then feel amazing. So whatever it is in your language, I always tend to say, what's been happening, or what's the best thing that's happened, or what amazing thing are you working on, if it's a work context. So I think that's really, really important. I think the other thing is to really, in a nice way, reduce your exposure to pessimists. I think find out who and what makes you sparkle and be around those people. It's too easy to see, especially in the workplace, all the pessimists, you'll find them around the water cooler having a whinge because they've got that in common. So surround yourself where you can with people that are optimistic. You can't always do that, but I think it's with heart and integrity. I think if you're going through a tough time, and I was speaking to a client today, they're having a massive restructure, and he said, I've just been talking nonstop to all the people that haven't bought into the restructure. And I said, what about the ones that have? Speak to them. So it's almost going against the grain, but hang out with optimists, be around people that are quite positive, and make sure that you're open to optimistic people in your network, and be open that your network and your relationships change. I don't know about everyone here tonight, but I know a lot of my relationships changed last year. Yeah. I got closer to some people that I never thought or didn't even know before last year. Just different things, but take that lightly and go with the flow and be open to that. I got all of them.
You have got all of them. It's brilliant. No, I think we all find it incredibly inspiring, Renée. It's just, for those of you who don't have it, this is a great book, The Gift Mindset. And Rod, who actually has told us he's in his pajamas in San Diego at 2:30 in the morning, and he's got his book on the way, and he's watching this early in the morning to support you, Renée. I just think that's wonderful. So, Jenny, what questions have you got for Renée?
Oh, so many.
Oh, she's been checked again.
Look, I mean, yeah, I suppose what when people are talking about the gift of optimism, what would be your biggest suggestion to people who are not naturally optimistic for what they can do?
Yeah. Oh. Probably the biggest suggestion, because you don't want to be all put it on and Pollyanna, and biggest thing I can say is do what lights you up. So I'm a big believer in energy and re-energizing, and I think when we're around people that light us up, or when we do what lights us up, so not what we're good at necessarily, but what we enjoy doing, especially in a work sense. So many people do what they're good at, and I'll say, are you happy? And they'll go, but Renée, I'm really good at it. And I'll go, do you love it? I'm really good at it. And then they go, no. So think about what it is that lights you up, and don't manage that, satisfy that, and bring that in as much as you can into your life and into your work. And I know, you know me, Jenny, my passion out of work is cooking without recipes, and I zone out. I'm not a TV person. And I know if I'm feeling tired, even tonight, I've had a big day, I'll cook after this, and that re-energizes me and keeps me optimistic. So that's one. And it comes back to mindset and self-awareness, you know, step back and say, you know, where am I if I'm down this end? When was I optimistic? What was different? What could I change or do differently to bring that back into my state? Yeah. Yeah.
And Noirin, what question do you have for Renée?
I was going to ask, which of all the gifts do you practice the most, just yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. So probably the gift of growth's the big one. I've got a real growth mindset, and I love growing others and growing myself through others and with others. So the gift of growth's the big one. And I think it's one we all need to stop, you know, sort of reflect, reset and refocus. You know, what do we want to know? There's so much out there, it can be overwhelming. The world's our oyster now when it comes to self-growth. So what do I need now? What's my learning style and how will I get that? So self-growth's a huge one. I think the gift of re-energizing is actually one I'm going to do a little bit of work on this weekend. So bringing in some of the tips and things that, you know, I educate people in and do, but ramp that up a bit, because we all know we can't pour from an empty cup. So, you know, really making some time and jealously protecting that time. They're probably the main two. You know, I'm always optimistic.
No, actually, I love that actually. And, you know, you really are that, because I mean, I'm friends with you on Facebook, and I see a lot of your posts and things, and really you do actually take serious time out to re-energize and to, you know, immerse yourself in the things that actually, you know, fill your cup, as you say. So you talk the talk and walk the talk, and of course you're always growing, because I mean, you're always learning. I know what you're like. You're always open to things and learning. So I'm not surprised to hear that, but it's lovely to have them affirm.
And the other one, which I think, you know, you personify this in spades, is a gift of curiosity. Having childlike wonder about things. And, you know, last year that was a big gift. I know for me, turning everything I do that's face-to-face, as you know, online, live workshops. I'm a big connector. So being, you know, in lockdown, we all went through it. And I know, Amanda, you're still in it. But the gift of curiosity, I think, is so important. I think the future of leadership is being adaptive, innovative, and collaborative. And when people say, oh, we need to be more collaborative, come and do a team workshop, I say, being collaborative, that's sort of the output of being adaptive and innovative together. And you can't do that, back to Jeff's comment earlier, without curiosity. Curiosity helps us explore, you know, provocate, and observe what the things that we're curious about and actually bring them to fruition. I think too many people look at something and wonder how it's done, like a magic show, and then that they tick that and nothing happens. But going into a deeper, you know, state of curiosity and questioning things. And a really good tip, if I can share it, is to flip statements into questions. So instead of saying that team's amazing or that business is amazing, what about what makes that team amazing? Or how is that business being amazing? And straight away, you go from what I call a one-dimensional thought to an open and curious mindset to learn and explore.
Love it.
Absolutely brilliant. Now, I'm just jumping the gun a little bit because Renée Dior rang me from Brisbane today. And Renée, if you can unmute yourself, with a really brilliant question on the gift mindset. So I'd just love you, Renée, to ask that question you have on the gift mindset.
All right, I'll do my best. Thanks, Victor, for letting me come on and ask my question. I was a little bit unsure if it fit or not, Renée, but when you were, I guess, we're going through some of them, I heard contribution come up. So I'm like, okay, this might be related. A friend of mine sent me the link to this just yesterday, and I saw the word gift and I just signed up. I've been researching the gift economy for the last couple of months. I write for the Coach Guardian. I'm the co-founder and curating editor for it. And I like to write things that I think will expand the coaching collective and give them new ideas as we shift into this. It feels like we're in this stage of unraveling right now. And as we shift into this new paradigm that's happening, and help coaches and people who are in the healing and teaching space kind of be prepared. So gift economy is something that I'm really curious about and exploring. You know, we're really clear on the exchange economy. I give you this, you get this back. I was wondering if you have any views on that and where that might go in the future. And I hope that question made sense.
Yeah. So how to bring that in? Is that what you're sort of asking?
Yeah. How do you see a future in gifting and its relationship to abundance? You know, is maybe fleshing out which I don't know what's under the contribution, because I just found you guys yesterday. So
no, it's a great question. And contribution's a big part of the gift mindset, and it's one of the gifts. And I think contribution, I think of contribution to yourself. Yep. Contribution to your home team, your work team, and your community. So I think there's 4 things there. And I think, like, when you talk about the gift economy, I think sometimes it goes into one of those areas. And I think we need balance across the 4, starting with self. So, you know, we all hear we give so much at work. And I heard a saying years ago, you know, when I get home, Renee, I just feel like my energy's in the lost property box and my family's getting the dregs at the end of the day. So I think it's about getting the balance between the 4 and connecting and contributing in different ways. So, Renee, in a work sense, it could be sharing lunch, bringing lunch in together and connecting. And that brings in all the diversity and culture and, you know, those sorts of things. I'm a big believer food is a time machine to our memories, and it's the best way to connect to other people and other cultures and understand other cultures, I guess. And I think it's gifting skills. If you think about work, I think and I do a lot of coaching, so I'm totally getting where you're coming from. I think, you know, sharing knowledge. There was a statistic that came, analysis showing that up to $31 billion is being lost in Fortune 500 companies from staff and employees not sharing ideas and lessons. So, you know, I just think a gift mindset culture at home, sharing. And I think when you share, people share back.
Yeah. Can I touch on that? Because you know, when you give, I think there's something about giving without any expectation.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that and what you've seen, what you've experienced?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's something that's really important, not always to expect something back, but what I'm seeing, and we're running a lot of the gifts, we unwrap them in businesses, and we're noticing a lot more people are opening up about themselves and sharing mistakes when someone else does. So it's not intentional, but it just happens. But it is important, I think, and I'm a big believer in have an abundance mindset, not a mindset of scarcity. So I'm a big believer, you know, you give, you get back. And being in service to others is the basis of the gift mindset. It's selfish not to share. I interviewed a CEO, I was going to say last year, it would have been the year before, and she didn't want to be open about her story. And I said, how can you help create future leaders and empower others without sharing it? Isn't it a bit selfish? She goes, I never thought of it like that. So I think it's important to know when we share our gifts, whatever they may be, it's about being in service to others. And if you go into how articulate how you've actually achieved whatever it is, sort of takes the limelight off you personally and gets it out into actionable sort of chunks for people. But yeah, I'm a big believer, just it's one of my values is to be in service to everyone around me. And I think it can go a long way.
Yeah,
how
no,
does-
you are
how-
huge. You are a huge giver. Jeff, I think you had a question to raise.
Oh,
There we go. I'm
Yep.
unmuted now. Yes, indeed. And that's actually a nice segue, because we were talking just yesterday about words and how people see them and see them differently. We talked about mental health and the fact that when you talk about physical health, people think I'm going to the gym, I'm doing lots of good things. But when you say the word mental health, people immediately go to the negative side and the sort of conclusion that maybe wellness, the term wellness, has hijacked the positive side of mental health. But one of the other things is gift. And so if you think about gift, the interesting thing, and a segue really to Rod's put up the word altruism and the idea of giving rather than receiving. And gift is one of those words, if you said it to somebody, some people will have the mindset of something they get, and others will have the mindset of something they give. And so I'd be very interested in your experience of turning around it back to the point you just explained about someone saying, I've got this thing, I'm scared of giving it. Not realizing that actually giving is the flip side of gifting, if you like. How do you see people best being able to give the gift of optimism and the other gifts in their organizations?
Yeah, great question. And I think it comes back, there's givers and takers in the world. We all know that. And some people give too much, some people take too much. In the workplace, I think it's about, and all the gifts we're talking about, it's really about setting up, and it sounds quite practical, but we're really starting to do this in the last 6 weeks in a lot of businesses, starting to set up forums and a space where people can do that. So not too formal, but open conversations where they're talking about, this happened and I made this mistake, instead of sweeping it under the rug, and knowing that there's got to be trust there. The opposite of trust is fear. Yeah. So I always say, if anyone's fearing anything, I say, what aren't you trusting? So there's got to be trust there to know that if you do share your mistakes, that people are going to support you beyond that conversation. So as simple as, I've got companies doing win Wednesdays, failure Fridays, but they're not going, I had this win or I had this failure. They're actually breaking it down into, we've got a model that we use, which is GIFT, G-I-F-T. So it's G, have you grown? We've got questions. I is how you're going to integrate this into your life. So the G and the I are about you. And then the F and the T are about everyone else. How can you facilitate learning for other people? And T is how can that help transform? So I think just getting some practices, but it's got to start at the top in companies. That's the first thing I'll say. It's got to start at the top. And we've got to be open to share. And look, there's some cultures, workplace cultures, that are very performance-based, very transactional, that I've spoken to that are like, oh, I'm not going to share that. But there's others that aren't. So we've got to get rid of all these barriers. Judgment from others is the biggest one that's coming up. Oh, I don't want to share that with Jeff. He thinks I'm really, good at my job. That could expose me. Or I don't want to share that success my team had because we did that. That's our secret weapon. I call that using success as a secret weapon. And then the big one we're seeing, we did a poll today on a podcast I was on this morning, was lack of awareness and self-reflective time. People think it's indulgent. So I think we've got to overcome those barriers and really get it started at the top and really get people connecting and collaborating. Yeah.
So I think that's a good segue in, because I think Amanda had a question on corporates.
Yes. Oh.
There I am on mute
Well,
as well. So yes, that is a good segue, because I was thinking, you know, the flip side to what you were saying. You were talking that you did a lot of corporate workshops, and I was interested to see that, you know, when you did talk to the leaders of the company and the managers and so on, what did they see as the most important gifts?
Yeah, it varies, and we actually get them to prioritize them as to how we'll run the program. So courage has been a really popular one because people have got to innovate, and if people are fearful of innovating and risk taking, they need courage. So that's been a really popular one, and a very obvious one's been the gift of change. That's been a big one. I've run 2 things this week on that. And obviously the gift of optimism, I've run at quite a few events, and it's amazing how many people will put their hands up and go, oh, that's one of my values. You know, that's in my top 5 values. So I think they all have a place, but it's a great question. It really does vary, Amanda, depending on where the business is at. The small business, I work with mid-tier mainly, but some small business owners have sort of reached out. And the gift of forgiveness has been, we actually got a few articles published last week on the taboo subject of forgiveness in the workplace. It's sort of been a really interesting one.
Oh, that sounds fascinating. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that one? Because that doesn't necessarily tend to fit to the workplace. So
no, and it's sort of been a bit secret squirrely, like a bit like forgiveness is one, and we've never forgiven that team. They sort of took one of our ideas, and it's never been the same, and we don't share now. So it stifles connection and communication. And yeah, forgiveness is one of the gifts. It was one of the gifts I wrote later in the book. I took some other gifts out and I put that one in, and I think it's, you know, this book I've written for everybody. It's not just leaders. So forgiveness, to me, if we don't forgive, we're going to be living, you know, we've got to go from poison to peace is my model around it. Because a lot of the time when there's no forgiveness, especially, you know, in say a workplace relationship, people start, you know, I've done coaching for a long time. People will say to me, they'll start to actually imagine stuff. They'll be like, and start to blame themselves because they're just going around in circles in their own head about the situation. So it's like, it's actually not you. You've got to move past that. And it comes back to the number one thing we all need, communication at the end of the day. Yeah.
Victor, it's interesting because forgiveness is actually something that's part of the habits of an optimist as well. And we talk about that and have a whole explanation for that. I think a lot of the time it's, you know, forgiving others, but also forgiving yourself.
Big one.
It's such a huge, interesting thing. And
It
I think
is
kind of that permission to forgive yourself and kind of let go of misdoings you perceive you've done.
And yeah, you're right. And that's what I'm saying though, is when you don't forgive someone else, you start to blame yourself. So it's like you've got to take that out of it. Dr. Fred Luskin was on one of the Centre of Optimism early when I first met Victor, I think. And, you know, I talk about some things he says in the book, but, you know, not forgiving, it's poison. It can really affect your well-being, your mindset. I think, you know, I'm sure everyone on here has had some, you know, something in their life where, or someone, can be a situation too. It's not always forgiving a person. It can be forgiving a circumstance. But yeah, I know personally, not forgiving, you know, it doesn't work. So it comes back to self-compassion. I think sometimes we have more compassion for others than we do for ourselves.
That was, in fact, one of our funniest episodes, Renée. Remember, Fred was online and we're talking for 20 minutes and he says, oh, by the way, who are you guys?
Yeah, he goes, what am I doing here?
I love what you're doing. And he's been a member and enthusiast ever since. We all laughed like an optimist then, didn't we?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
So Renée, we're going to start to, I'm going to those who are in pajamas, I'm not going to bring you online, but those of you who want to come on and join Wild Mike, either raise your hand or pop a little message there, because we do have some people who are in the middle of the night and are with us. But Renée, what's a question that I haven't asked you that you're burning to share?
I knew you'd ask me this. Oh, and I should have known because I asked this question. Damn
That's
it.
the question.
That is the question. Thanks, Jeff. I guess what's a simple way to walk away from today or tonight, wherever you are, and start applying or embracing the gift mindset?
Yeah, I think that's right. As I said, you know, the book is just so popular. You know, and as those of you who haven't bought it, you know, it's available online. Once the airports open up again, it'll be in the airports. But what I just love about it is every chapter's got something about implementation. Implementation. And, you know, one of the ones I always give the homework of, Renée, and your mum gave you this advice, is get rid of the question, how are you?
Yeah.
You know, hello, what's the best thing in your day, or what's been the best thing in your week? And everyone I ever asked the question of sort of stops. And, you know, at the checkout today in the supermarket, the woman said, I've got to think about it. But in thinking about it, she was uplifted.
Yeah. And even what have you learnt today is another one we've got in there.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So when you go to bed at night, what's something new I've learnt today? And it's a really good gauge too, if you're really not, you know, doing the self-growth thing, I guess. If you're learning not even a new way to do something, that's something to question, but there's always something to learn. Victor, I just want to add, on the giftmindset.com website, we've got downloadable infographics on each of the 12 gifts that you can print off. They're all free. And lots of other resources you can print off, little reminders and things like that.
No, you exemplify the gift mindset. You're just so generous, and we all think that. So panelists, come on, we've got another 5 minutes left before we have to wrap up. Who's got a question that we haven't asked?
We've got a question online from Julie Green's just come through with.
Julie, hello.
Fantastic.
Well, I'm sure Julie's respectable there in Melbourne, so we'll bring her up onto the panel. And in fact, it's a very, very, very good question. Oh, hang on, we'll just get her onto video, ask to start video. There we are. Hi, Julie.
Hello, everyone.
It is great to see you. For those who don't know Julie, one of our greatest episodes on climate and the environment, Greening Australia, the incredible work they do. Julie brought that to the screen with absolute optimism. Now, I know there's not much electricity out there near Melbourne, but we can see your face, Julie. What's your wonderful question?
Oh, look, lovely to listen to you all. And I'm just having problems with my panel here that seems to be going out. So, look, it's just in terms of political leaders, I'm just not that impressed, to be honest, Renée, around the world. And I was just thinking about what you would say to encourage a gift mindset for our political leaders.
Yes, we'll send them the book.
Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah, I think we have to a few, but what I would say to them is it's all about stepping back and, I guess, being real, being raw, and looking at whatever you've done, good or bad, as a learning for everybody. And I think it's that whole piece of, you know, vulnerability's the new black. Don't know if that's always embraced there, but I think that's a really important thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
That's a great question. That is a great question. So look, we're at the 7:55 mark. So what we normally do at this point is we do our formal thank yous. So what I'm going to do, go round the panelists and just ask them to give us a one-sentence conclusion. Renée, ask you to give that final message to everyone online. And then we'll ask everyone on board to have that wild mark that we love so much. So Amanda, what's your last reflection?
Look, I just think I love the marriage of optimism and gifts, because optimism is a gift.
Yep. Love it.
Oh, I love that. That's a quotable quote. Renee, that's edition 2.
Yep. Oh, don't get me started.
We do. Jeff, what's your final conclusion and message?
Oh, I think mine is that the optimistic perspective on gifts is there for giving, not for receiving.
Yep. Love
Absolutely brilliant. Noirin, you and Jeff are Tweedledum and Tweedledee, synchronizing. What's your final conclusion and message?
I don't know. I think Renee's an amazing ambassador for optimism. And that's what I'm just seeing here. So, Renee, go forth and be optimistic. Thank you.
Oh, pleasure. Good to see you.
Jenny.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that too. I think the messages are just so relevant to everyone, and I think, you know that quote, when the learner is ready, the teacher will appear. I think it's about kind of getting the messages to the people when they're ready to actually listen to them and actually use them for good, not evil. But yeah, love it. Love the messages.
Absolutely fantastic. So Renee,
Yeah,
what's
I
the
think
last message to your fan club? As I said, you've got people at 2 o'clock in the morning in their pajamas in San Diego watching you.
Yeah.
What are you going to leave us to inspire us with?
I think we all have gifts, and if we're open to unwrapping them and using optimism, I believe anything's possible.
Well, Renee, we are your fan club. We love your book. We love the fact that the number one gift is optimism. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for highlighting the work of the Centre for Optimism and the habits of an optimist, not just in your book, but in what you're talking about on social media and elsewhere. So from the bottom of my heart, I say thank you, and we are here to be your fans. Now, what I'd like a favour from you is, as we go out, I reckon 20 seconds of laugh like an optimist.
Yep.
Do you want to lead it?
Yeah, I'll lead
Done.
it. Get the mics off, guys. Come on.
No, everyone, mics on. All muting off. Benet, muting off. Bobby, muting off. Everyone who's in their pajamas and aren't visible to us, you can still unmute. We've got a decency button, Amanda. Renee, go for it. Oh my God, my ribs hurt. Renee, that was brilliant. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the show. I hope you ended up laughing like we did and enjoyed that episode of the Optimism Cafe with Renee. We'd love you to get involved with the Centre for Optimism. Just go to our website, centreforoptimism.com, and you can sign up either as a member or just for our free events notices, and find what is now one of the deepest and richest sites on the benefits of optimism and what makes people optimistic. And your homework, perhaps, if you like, is what makes you optimistic.